My boss fired me on live TV for incompetence. He didn't know I held 51% of his shares. My boss looked into a live camera in front of 200,000 viewers and fired me for incompetence. What he didn't know was that I owned 51% of the company he was standing in, and by the time the segment ended, so did his career. If you enjoy watching arrogant people learn expensive lessons, hit subscribe, because this story earns it. My name is Naomi, and for 11 years I worked in the shadow of a man named Preston Hale. I started as an unpaid intern at Hale Media Group the summer after I graduated, sleeping on my Aunt Denise's pull-out couch because I couldn't afford rent and a commute. Denise was the one who believed in me before anyone else did, a retired accountant who'd raised me after my parents passed when I was 16. "You have a mind for numbers most people would kill for," she told me once, watching me untangle a spreadsheet full of errors at her kitchen table. "Don't ever let anyone talk you out of that." Preston hired me full-time after that internship, and for years I told myself he was a mentor. He was charismatic on camera. Hale Media ran a popular business news network, and he had a way of making you feel chosen when he praised you, which made it hurt even more when the praise disappeared. Denise met him once at a company holiday party and pulled me aside afterward. "That man interrupted you 4 times in 10 minutes, she said, "and every time you apologized to him. Watch that." I didn't watch it. I climbed instead. Junior analyst, senior analyst, financial strategist, and by year 6, chief financial officer. Along the way, I did something Preston never fully understood the weight of. I quietly invested every bonus, every stock option, every piece of equity compensation directly back into company shares, year after year, because I believed in what we were building more than he ever did. By year 9, my Aunt Denise, who managed my portfolio with the same precision she'd used her whole accounting career, told me something that made me sit down at her kitchen table in stunned silence. "Naomi," she said, sliding a printed statement across the table, "you own more of this company than he does." The early years with Preston as my boss felt, in a strange way, like the honeymoon phase of a relationship, because in many ways, that dynamic is exactly what it becomes when someone controls your career. He praised me publicly, called me his secret weapon in meetings, took me to dinners where he'd talk for hours about his vision for the network. Then, slowly, the praise curdled into something else. He started correcting my presentations in front of junior staff, small jabs disguised as jokes. "Naomi's numbers are always right," he'd say, "even when her people skills need work." He began taking credit for strategies I'd built from scratch, presenting them as his own in board meetings while I sat 2 seats down, saying nothing. Colleagues who used to eat lunch with me started keeping their distance, not out of dislike, but because Preston made it clear, through cutting remarks and cold shoulders, that being close to me came with professional risk. My friend Colin in marketing pulled away first, then my assistant, then almost everyone except Denise, who I called every single week just to hear someone remind me I wasn't imagining things. The first major incident happened during a board dinner in year 8. I'd flagged a risky expansion deal Preston wanted to push through, a deal that would have cost the company nearly $4 million in bad debt within 18 months. In front of 6 board members, he mocked my excessive caution and said, loudly enough for the waitstaff to hear, "This is why we don't let numbers people make vision decisions." The table laughed. I sat there with my face burning, saying nothing, the way I'd trained myself to say nothing for years. He apologized the next morning with a bottle of wine left on my desk and no note. The calm lasted about a month. The next incident, taking sole credit for a restructuring plan I'd spent 4 months building, came with an apology that lasted a week. By year 10, the cycle had shrunk to days. Praise, humiliation, a hollow apology, repeat. The ticking clock arrived when Hale Media announced a live, network-wide town hall to address falling viewership and investor concerns. Broadcast not just internally, but streamed publicly to shareholders and press, given the company's recent public listing. Preston, under pressure from the board over declining numbers, needed a scapegoat, and I watched, in the weeks leading up to it, as he began building a narrative that our recent financial struggles were the result of outdated financial strategy, my strategy. The turning point came 10 days before the town hall. I was pulling quarterly reports late one night when I noticed a discrepancy in a vendor contract Preston had signed personally, without board approval. A $600,000 consulting agreement with a company that, according to public records Denise helped me trace, was registered to Preston's brother-in-law. It wasn't just favoritism. It was undisclosed related party dealing, a serious violation for a publicly listed company. I sat with that knowledge for 2 days before calling Denise, hands shaking as I explained it over the phone. "Don't confront him yet," she said, calm as always. "Build the file first. Get everything documented, dated, and backed up somewhere he can't touch. Then let him do what he's going to do." So I did. I compiled the vendor contract, the board disclosure requirements he'd violated, and, because Denise insisted, a full accounting of my own share accumulation over 11 years, proof, in black and white, of exactly what I owned. The final incident happened on that stage, in front of the cameras, exactly as the title promises. Preston, cornered by falling numbers and a board growing suspicious of the very contract I'd uncovered, decided his best move was to publicly humiliate the person he saw as an easy target. Midway through the live town hall, in front of employees, press, and shareholders watching the stream, he turned to me and said, "Naomi's financial oversight has frankly been incompetent, and effective today, her role here is terminated." The room went silent. Somewhere in the audience, I heard Denise's voice. She'd insisted on flying in that week, sensing something was coming. Say, quietly but clearly, "That's not his call to make." The gasp from the room was audible on the live stream. I then presented, calmly and methodically, the undisclosed vendor contract with his brother-in-law's company, the board disclosure violations, and a formal motion, one I'd filed with legal counsel that same morning, timed precisely for this moment, for his immediate removal as CEO, pending a full securities investigation. Preston stood frozen at the podium, his face draining of color as reporters in the room began typing furiously, as investors watching the live stream began pulling up their trading apps. Within 72 hours, the SEC opened a formal inquiry into the related party contract. Within 2 weeks, the board voted unanimously to remove him. Within a month, facing mounting legal fees and a securities violation that barred him from serving as an officer of a public company for 5 years, Preston's reputation in the industry he'd spent 30 years building was finished. I was appointed interim CEO the same week, and 6 months later, the board made it permanent. My Aunt Denise sat in the front row at my formal installation, wearing the same navy blazer she'd worn to that holiday party years earlier, when she first warned me to watch how Preston treated me. Afterward, she squeezed my hand and said, "I told you, a mind for numbers most people would kill for." This time, I let myself believe her completely. Hale Media Group posted its strongest quarter in company history within my first year running it. Preston, last I heard, was living off what remained of his settlement, unable to find work in an industry that no longer trusted his name. If watching a quiet accountant become the most powerful person in the room gave you chills, make sure you're subscribed, because next week I'm telling you about a woman who found out her husband's business partner had been living in their guest house for 2 years, and the moment she found the second set of house keys, you will not want to miss it.